Is that you, Mona? You going to give us some insight on that first agenda item?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mona Bernard, Director of Risk Management. We thought we'd share with you that our loss trends for automobile accidents and workers' comp injuries looks like it's trending downward right now. We wanted to share what we have so far this year. We see currently a 15% reduction in the number of automobile losses. And if the trend for the severity, that is the cost or the dollars we spend of auto losses continues, we could see a 30% reduction in the cost of automobile claims in 2016. We see a 30% reduction trend in the number of workers' comp claims. And with respect to the amount of money that we spend, or what we call the severity of the comp claims or the high dollar claims, we could see an 11% reduction in the cost of workers' comp claims in 2016. And there are charts attached showing both severity, which is the cost, and if you look at the first chart, LPSB auto chart of severity, you see we've been on a somewhat downward trend. And the green bar is this year's annualized number if we continue as we're going. We have no crystal ball, obviously, but we feel that it looks like some of our efforts at safety and training are paying off. And I think just getting safety in front of the employees on a regular basis is helping a lot. So we felt like we needed to share that with you. And if there's any other detail you would like, please let me know and I can provide that to y'all.
I'm still absorbing the numbers. The 2016 is 20. I'm looking at the auto chart of frequency. That's 20, and we're in the 8th month of the year. Or are you using a different type of year? Are you using using a calendar year or some sort of school year?
He is using policy year, but I think he means calendar year actually.
Okay, so
because he says 1/1, and this is as of 7/31/16.
So we have 3 months left of 2016.
Yes.
75% through the year, and we have a 50% current reduction in accidents yet. Okay, so we are on a downward trend. That's good. This auto severity magnitude of claims is significant. That's down $100,000, which is 50, 60, 70%.
And with severity, that's going to develop over time because some of those claims are fresh and they may end up reserving them a little bit higher down the road, but we are looking less than we were. They do develop. I think frequency is more reliable as far as trend, and severity, you have to consider there could be some still developing.
On the workers' comp chart of frequency, that again is also a huge decrease in 1 year. And do you think, are you able to break out the types of claims and where you're seeing the most results, if they're in the classroom or the maintenance folks?
We can do that. We certainly can. I don't have that fresh with me, but that's not a problem.
I think we'd be interested to see where within our org chart where we're being most effective. If it's maintenance folks, equipment operators, teachers.
Sure.
That is also an amazing trend downward in 1 year. And the severity.
Ms. Morris?
So, Ms. Bernard, we've talked in the past about working towards a return to work type program. Do you have any progress updates on that?
We've met with 2 of the major clinics that we use for workers' comp accidents, so we are making steady progress. We're at the point where we need to identify some transitional duty jobs, which I've written some job descriptions, and now I'm at the point I need to get with Mr. Guidry and see how we want to fund those positions. If we want to take some dollars out, shift them out of workers' comp, expecting that those losses will be less. So we're making progress. We're not totally there, but we are returning people on a case-by-case basis on modified duty. We have been doing that.
Nope. Ms. Mona, we brought in a consultant to help us with this. Are there any more initiatives? What I don't want is this becomes a blip in the radar because this board and this executive committee is paying attention to it. So are there any more processes that are going to be implemented over the next year that we can see maybe this downward trend continue?
Absolutely. We're going to expand our online training, but I think more importantly, our safety committee, which meets every other month, is talking about bringing accountability into the picture. In other words, not just identifying these are the kinds of losses, this is what we're doing, this is what but they want to know specifically in reaction to this person slicing our hand in the cafeteria, what are you going to do? Well, Renee is going to buy some Kevlar gloves for them. We want to see what is the reaction, what are the actions we took, and that we're still rolling that out, but we're doing a good job of our regular safety meetings with good agendas, and we're starting to do something with the information, not just look at the information. So I think you'll be pleased to see that.
Well, I think the rest of the board would be interested in this information, so I would recommend whenever you feel it's appropriate to bring it to the rest of the board. And I would also love if you invited those folks from the safety committee to the board so that we could publicly acknowledge that they've done an amazing job in just the last 2 or 3 years in changing the safety culture of the school system and reducing money spent on claims and increasing money in the classroom. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that it, Ms. Morris? All right. Next on our agenda, Mr. Broussard, is Schools of Choice waiting list.
If I could just interrupt real quick before Mr. Broussard goes to the microphone. One of the attachments we gave the committee are the waiting list numbers for the different schools of choice we have in the parish. And as we go into significant rezoning and a rerouting of all the bus routes, the thought has come up that we might want to consider expanding academies, schools of choice, where there's a excess in demand in terms of what the schools are able to support. And one of those thoughts, Mr. Broussard would like to talk about possibly expanding health careers. At some point, Ms. Samick would like to talk about dual enrollment Spanish two-way immersion. And Ms. Olivier will have some numbers. Hopefully we can provide you if there's any interest. Sorry, Mr. Broussard, it's yours.
Do we want to see the numbers from Ms. Olivier first, or does it matter?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and then we'll call Ms. Olivier up. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And does
Thank you.
Ms. Olivier will have the waiting list numbers on this chart that Ms. Samick handed out to us?
No, what I
Oh,
can
no,
do is I
sorry.
can
have
print
current.
that attachment and get it to you if you didn't.
I have that one. I
Okay,
just
I'm
didn't know,
sorry.
because it looks like some of the numbers are quite different for the number of kids enrolled, so I didn't know if the waiting list was quite different also.
I can check on that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Craig, Executive Board. I certainly appreciate this few minutes to share with you some of our thoughts in the community. As the board make steady strides to try to balance our educational system on next year, on September 14th, trying to balance the student population, we need to take a look, and I'd like to take a look at some of the academies that we've got around the area so we can balance off that as well. One of our most recognized school in Lafayette Parish is Lafayette High. Lafayette High is doing an excellent job in the academies that they have, and it would be irresponsible of us not to take advantage of such a program to share it with the rest of the students. So I asked Mr. Joe Craig to try to look in expanding the help program to another high school, particularly or preferably Northside High School. We presently have a waiting list of almost 50 students and a capacity of 100 students. We can double that with another site to offer. We spoke about it, and I must be clear for those who are listening, not to get it off track. We want to in tandem with Lafayette High and trying to find out what they're doing to perfect what they're doing, because the healthcare industry is a large demand, not only in Lafayette, but the state of Louisiana and the country as well. So we'd be doing a great favor to our students and our educational system if we would look into expanding a program like the healthcare program and the early college academy program as well. We need to look into doing something like that. So I ask that you consider, that the board consider, executive board consider putting it on the agenda and moving forward with it. The numbers are there, the reasons are there for us to do it. The principal at Northside is here. We spoke about it, and she is, if she would speak a little bit about it, she is welcoming the challenge to do so, and I think it's going to be a good thing.
Ms. Morris?
And Mr. Broussard, just to be perfectly clear, and I think you explained it, is you're not talking in any way about moving the Health Academy away from Lafayette. You're talking about creating a second location
Yes.
for the Health Academy so that we have two different places that students making that choice
Right.
could opt for.
Availability. You know, it would be great of us if we would duplicate whatever they were doing. Like you said, we need to make that clear that we want to create another facilities to do what we're doing so well. Yeah.
My concern would be, first of all, I mean, I'm in agreement with you, although the beginning of the Health Academy starts at Karen Grove Middle, the biomedical program. But having said that, I think we need to make sure on a couple of things, and that is that we have enough student interest and involvement for it to be viable, you know, for it to work. And I think we need to pay attention to transportation, you know, bringing the kids from wherever they are to the second program. I mean, I just think we need to work, all of those need to be worked out, I think.
I think it's going to take some time to get teeth, to grab hold, but if we start the process, we can build on it. You mentioned the Health Academy starts at Camp Crow Middle. I think it would be a shorter transition from Camp Crow to Northside than it is to Lafayette High for those who want to go. We're not saying you should go to this school because you're closer. We're giving you another option, and I think it's right. But we've got to start someplace, and this is a good starting point.
Mr. Knizik, do you have any comments?
Mr. Broussard, so were you thinking that we would have like geographical groupings? So if you wanted to go to the Health Academy and you lived in a certain area, you would go to one school, and if you lived in a certain area, you'd go to another school?
It's touchy language, you know, that then we'll, you know, if the board sees fit to do that, then, you know, it'd be something to consider. If you live across the street from Northside, go to Northside versus Lafayette High, or vice versa. I think that's in the planning stages. Perhaps it would make more sense to do so, because both schools are going to be offering the exact same thing. That's what our plans are.
Since it's a committee and we can just discuss whatever we want, I will say that if we do go down that route, I would suggest that we decide that if we're going to set geographical boundaries, that we set a line that runs from the north part of the parish to the south part of the parish, and maybe bisects the parish, for instance, Louisiana Avenue and Johnston Street. And then we set the boundary and the geographical boundaries to be more eastern and western rather than northern and southern. I think that would do us well if we did go down that route. Do we have any idea, Dr. Aguilar, on a budget for anything like this? If we were to go all in on setting up an additional Academy of Health, how much more it would cost us?
So we asked Rob and Olivier to sort of research that information. If you don't mind, she can present her data.
Robin Olivier. This is some information that we had collected earlier in the year when we were looking at the possibility of moving the Health Academy. The data that I'm going to share with you was for 200 students if we start slowly and we were to put 2 grade levels, 9th and 10th grade. Of course, we would have a teacher to teach the intro to health occupations, which is our 9th grade class, and our 10th grade class is our health science. So we would have 2 teachers designated to teach those particular courses. We did some research into the types of labs that they would need. Mr. Craig and I contacted, I think it was Kyle, who pulled up some numbers of different types of lab facilities. Basically, for 2 years, considering all the equipment, teaching models, shared technology, curriculum supporting materials, the number was $204,000 for a 2-year program to be at another location.
Are you offsetting that at all by the fact that they're coming
Honestly,
from
this was
somewhere
not
else?
offset at all. This was purely if everything was here that we needed to move, and that was how we had did that analysis at the time, that would be the cost. But yes, there would be some offset in the cost because the staff would not be teaching just those students. They would be teaching other science courses. And of course, there are some existing facilities at Northside that could be used.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Morris?
So, Ms. Olivier, as I understand it, STEM, as part of its program, has some component related to health, do they not?
Biomedical, they focus on the science behind the healthcare, where it's not direct patient care. That's the big difference between Health Academy at Lafayette High on patient care versus science technology behind the healthcare.
And how many students are in that health program at STEM?
At STEM right now, at the high school level, now remember at STEM, they do choose different pathways, so
Right.
biomedical is a pathway within the school. I don't have the breakdown of each of the pathways at David Thibodeau, but Ms. Sammy did pass out the chart at the beginning of the meeting with David Thibodeau's numbers,
But that's for all the students, not just for biomedical?
not just for biomedical.
Okay. And then we also have a health-type program at W.D. Smith.
Yes, ma'am.
A
They
pathway.
have seen increase in numbers. We feel that's due to the Jump Start program. In the AM and in the PM, in our Intro to Health Medical Terminology, in the AM there's about 30 to 40 students, and in the PM the same thing. And in the second level of CNA program, which is our EMR program, the numbers are a tad bit smaller. They're in the mid-30s in the AM and in the PM.
And do you know what parts of the parish those students are coming from for that program?
The students at the Career Center, no, we don't know what schools would be their base school.
Okay.
We could find that out.
Well, it seems to me that if, let's say, a majority of the kids going to W.D. Smith for the Health Academy are coming from Karen Crow because of the biomedical program, or from Northside, or from that side of the parish, then maybe it makes a lot of sense to expand the Health Academy and to move that particular Jump Start pathway to there, so we're not having health offered at multiple locations and kind of spreading our assets. I know from my tour of W.D. Smith, there are quite a few medical pieces of equipment, hospital beds, CPR dummies, and things like that. So it certainly makes sense to me to consolidate all of those programs, and I think it would make sense to even consolidate the STEM biomedical program because it's still all related. Even though it is different from direct patient care, it's still similar courses that they're offering and things like that. So if it's something that the committee thinks we should move forward on, and on at least getting more information, I would like to explore deeply about consolidating all of those programs into one place, which I think will help build a second Health Academy location and create something that's really great and maybe even improve on what's already offered at Lafayette High School. So.
In the spring, when the question was brought to us about duplication, and we brought in community members from the healthcare to listen to presentations from David Thibodeau from Lafayette Health Academy and also from the Career Center. And there was a clear distinction on how the programs were different, but of course they all run in the vein of healthcare, so yet they still have some similarities.
Well, and one of the benefits of moving, hypothetically, the biomedical component from STEM to a Health Academy location is it then frees up those seats at STEM, and we know there's a waiting list even there at STEM for multiple of the other programs that are offered. So it seems like a win-win to me, but we would certainly need more information on all the various programs.
The breakdown at David Thibodeau, I know that their largest pathway is the biomedical pathway. I don't have the breakdown of each of those pathways, but I do know that is the largest pathway.
Okay.
I did speak to Mr. Debataz at STEM, and he has roughly 220 students in the biomedical pathway at STEM.
And in the attachment was the latest, it was dated 9/19, and that was the numbers that we ran once the school year was settling down. And as you can see, there was a couple of academies that still had students on the waiting list. Academy of Health in ninth, there was 26 on the waiting list, and there was 24 on the waiting list. At the beginning of the year, when the academy numbers were first ran, after the first lottery, the numbers were a tad bit significantly higher. They were 33 in the 9th grade and 26 in the 10th grade. Basically, what I gleaned from that data is that once the students are selected, they stay. There's not a lot of movement.
Okay. And what chart are you looking at? Because the one we have, I think, is older, maybe from the beginning of the
It was
school
the
year.
attached document of
Attached to
the
what?
lottery status.
Attached to what?
It should have been attached to the agenda item,
That's what we have.
the horizontal one.
Yeah, can
I
we
can
get a
make
copy
copies
of
of
that
this
one,
for you,
please?
yes.
Okay.
What's the date on it, Miss Olivier?
Ma'am?
What's the date of it?
The data was ran on 9/19.
It's the same one, Miss Morse.
That's the
It just
one we
printed
have.
differently.
That's this one. I'd like to at least look at yours to make sure, because yours looks a lot prettier than mine.
I think it's the same one that's on the attachment. It was run 9/19.
We'll get another copy of the different layout.
And I was having a conversation with Barbara Pippin. She's our enrollment management, and that's what she does, is she sits at the computer and works that data. And I asked her if she could maybe comment about the trend data over time. And statistically, she did say that there has always been a waiting list in that particular area, that over the last couple of years, the waiting list has diminished somewhat, and we do feel that's because of the impact of David Thibodeau, pulling more students to the scientific side of the medical profession.
And of the 220 students that are enrolled in the biomedical pathway at STEM, that's the middle school students and the high school students?
Yes.
It's all of them? Okay.
Do you have it broken down into high school?
For the biomedical,
The program at STEM?
no, sir.
No, Mr. Debataz had texted Mr. Craig with that information while we were here. So, well, I think it's certainly a good idea. I think Mr. Broussard said this, it's not something that would happen quickly, something that we would have to look at over the next couple of years, and I think we would have to get through the rezoning process first to see what happens with that and how that affects the lottery process and where kids are choosing to go, especially once the new school opens as well. But I think that we should perhaps have something a little concrete as far as continuing to study or to look at all of the options and kind of pulling all the healthcare programs together. What I would see is that there would be one health academy, but 2 locations. So it would be under one umbrella and just have 2 physical locations. And it makes sense to me that they're both on that side of the parish, because we have the biomedical program at Karen Crow Middle School, which is near Lafayette High School and Northside, or more near to those schools than to some of our others.
You bring out a good point, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel. If you have strong leadership that has grown the Health Academy, you would want to tap into that knowledge to help create something in the same fashion.
Yep.
In our system that we use for the lottery, it only captures data for incoming freshmen. It doesn't keep data for the upperclassmen, because that data is going to continuously change as students may exit the academy. within our district webpam systems, we track the number of students that are at that academy, but it does not contain their pathways when they do the pathway-specific choosing, such as David Thibodeau. So that's data that they have at their school that we don't track in our system, but we can definitely work with David Thibodeau to get that also.
I've got, I think, two questions. The first is, Dr. Aguilar, we had talked briefly earlier on about considering moving ECA 9th and 10th graders from where they're currently going to school to one of our other campuses. One of those mentioned was Northside. Is there more discussion on that? Should we talk about it now? And can you maybe give us some of the pros and cons of doing that? Because if I understood right, we're educating these students with our own folks, and it's costing us money. It's costing us additional money that we don't need to spend. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You are correct, and we did some time ago, we began to look at the viability of moving ECA, and quite frankly, there's probably no additional cost to move the program to another site. The question would be, is it the right move to make? There's been some conversation about 9th and 10th graders could attend a traditional school using the ECA umbrella. Could be at Northside, could be at any other location. The question would be, what's the advantage of sending children, 9th and 10th graders, to a high school to prepare or prep for the ECA experience? And if the ECA experience is on the SLCC campus because they've got the faculty there to support those classes, I think the larger issue for the district is one you maybe haven't thought much about, is that we are imminently poised to begin paying more and more tuition cost for those students in ECA and specifically at SLCC. We actually are trying to look for a cheaper funding model for dual credit courses because it's going to be increasingly expensive to provide that ECA experience for those children and those families. Moving it to Northside is a decision the board can make, but I think we have to look long and hard about, is there a particular advantage to doing so? And right now, I'm not sure that I see the advantage of simply moving the program to a new site.
Is there a financial advantage for the 9th and 10th graders to move them to a new site if they're not?
No, I don't really think there's a financial advantage at all. Our teachers are largely teaching those classes. So moving it for a reason. We have to define what's the reason we're moving the classes to a new site.
Okay,
It's not about savings.
Okay, so there is no financial advantage to move 9th and 10th grade ECA.
I don't see any financial advantage.
Okay.
If we're trying to increase the enrollment at Northside High School, we really need to allow the rezoning process to really play out. Mike Hefner's capacity for Northside shows it at 1,700 students. We need to see how many kids show up in August 2017 and see how many kids are at Northside High School. ECA can move wherever it needs to move. It could be at Southside High School, could be at Lafayette High, could be at Acadiana High. There's literally no advantage other than when you get to 11th and 12th grade, you've got to have teachers that are credentialed to offer those dual credit experiences.
Ms. Morris?
So this may be an obvious answer to this question, but just to make sure. So we do not pay SLCC tuition for the 9th and 10th graders in ECA.
There's a small amount of tuition because they take a smaller number of credit hours there that cost us money.
Okay.
But as they get to juniors and seniors, it's literally going to become full tuition.
All right. My understanding was the 9th and 10th graders were taking courses through our own LPSS employees, but some of them are also taking SLCC courses, or it's a dual enrollment?
They take one course.
One class in the fall, SLC dual enrollment, one class in the spring, both freshman and sophomore years.
And then my second question is, this chart shows that there's about 79 freshmen and about 72 sophomores. So for that number of students, for the classes that they're taking from our LPSS teachers that are there on campus, are those classes full? Are they at our full ratioed capacity, or are they very small classes? Like how many students are in a class in the 9th and 10th grade?
I guess saying full, they're 25, 28 kids. Yeah, they're full enrollment.
And that's how many are in each of those classes? Those teachers they're not having classes with 10 kids or 12 kids or?
Yeah, 25 to 1 freshman and sophomore classes as they take their junior and senior classes through SLCC. I couldn't tell you what
Yeah,
those,
but I'm just
But no, the
wondering.
freshman and sophomore classes,
They're-
yes ma'am,
they're
are
full.
basically full classes.
And just information for the board, I received about a week ago email from Ann Castile, the principal at SLCC, indicating that our ECA program was going to lose the use of one science lab in the upcoming school year. That's going to be problematic for our ECA students. At this point, they have access to the lab only on Friday afternoons, and the intent was to make one lab unavailable. So it's going to be problematic for ECA to offer the lab experiences if SLCC doesn't provide the space.
And is that lab for the freshmen and sophomores or for the junior and seniors? Seems like if it's for the juniors and seniors, they should have as much access as any other SLCC student since we're paying full tuition for them.
I agree.
So,
I'm sure we can work
That
it out.
access is for our 9th and 10th graders that are in biology classes taught by our high school teachers. The juniors and seniors, of course, have a traditional SLCC schedule, so they take a biology lab with other SLCC students.
I'm sure we can work it out with Dr. Harder and her staff and our staff.
We're reaching out to have a meeting with Dr. Harder. You're correct.
I don't know, were you going to? I have one more thing then. All right. Dr. Aguilar, if we're going to look at potentially expanding campuses for our health academy, I like calling it the health academy with multiple campuses. If we're going to look at that, it looks like from the data that our arts and technology, arts, performing arts, visual arts, so the arts world, and STEM are also two very successful, very popular programs. So I think it would be, if we're going to do some sort of comprehensive look at a academy, that we look at the you pick these schools, J. Wallace James, Alamo, and the programs are highly successful. You know, that's great, wonderful, busting at the seams, but maybe it's time that we look at expanding those programs as well. So maybe we should look at health, arts, and STEM, and what we can do on a holistic basis, elementary, middle, and high school, at offering additional campuses for those programs.
You are absolutely correct. In fact, that's why we began with the initial request to consider Northside as a site for the Health Academy, but you can see by the agenda item, we've expanded this to show you all of the programs with waiting list. We have some incredibly popular programs. We have instances where we have programs with waiting list. The question really speaks to, does this board want the district to begin developing dual campuses for successful programs? I think we're poised to make that decision. Can we make that decision in time for Fall Frenzy? I'm not sure that we can do that quickly. We're getting ready to publish advertisement documents for Fall Frenzy for the upcoming school year, but we are at the point, I believe, where it justifies successful programs. We can grow these programs by having a secondary site.
well, Mr. Knezik took some of the words out of my mouth. I was looking at the numbers on the waiting list at J. Wallace James, and then thinking about the fact that we've moved performing arts to Como, and of course, we have the middle school at Alamo. So that seems like one of the programs that we can definitely have, or certainly have enough capacity to have multiple locations under the Arts Academy for the elementary school. I don't think we can do it for this Fall Frenzy, but it seems to me that transitioning one of our South Side elementary schools into a Arts Academy, similar to J. Wallace James, is something we can look at into the future and maybe do it on a grade level by grade level, starting with kindergarten and working. Now, I know that all of our schools on the South Side are quite full, but I think we can still develop the academies. Despite that, that would help take care maybe of the almost 300 students on the waiting list for that particular program. And then a second thought about the Como Performing Arts. I do realize that the dance program is very popular, and of all the performing arts programs, it has the most students on the waiting list. So I would like, and this may perhaps be able to be done for Fall Frenzy this year, and that's to increase the capacity or the seats available for the dance program, and maybe even a chorus, which also has a waiting list. Seems like there'll be enough room at Como to increase both of those, to maybe account or take care of the waiting list on those programs. So I would ask that y'all take a look at that for Como's Performing Arts program.
Yes, sir, Mr. Centennial. We appreciate your patience.
Well, I figure if I sat here long enough, you guys would hit every topic on my list, and y'all hit about half of them. I'll say that. The first thing that I would say is, I think y'all hit on Northside's enrollment. The zone, as seen on the maps last week, was right under 1,700, I think. And so I'd certainly say that we should be mindful of the fact that through rezoning, we're trying to use the facilities that we have in the best way possible. And before we overcommit to a particular school, we should really take a look and see how many students are actually going to show up and what the results of the rezoning would be. Expanding the Health Academy to more seats, I know Lafayette High's enrollment will be reduced through rezoning, and I would imagine that a lot of that waiting list could be accommodated at Lafayette High. That said, I fully support duplicating a program and making an investment in health careers, health sciences, because I know those are the well-paying jobs. I went to a lecture by Greg Gautreaux, the director of the Lafayette Economic Development Authority, a couple of weeks ago, and he said that there are two types of jobs that show economic health in your community. One is value-added jobs. That's you're producing something, you're manufacturing, you're pulling oil out of the grounds, things like that. And the other is healthcare. And it's because the cost of healthcare keeps rising, and the people that the employees and the professionals needed to staff hospitals and doctors' offices are in high demand, and we don't produce enough of them. So I think while the cost may seem a bit high at first, especially for the number of students that might be there initially, I think it's an investment. It's a long-term investment. It's a cost that, if we're sure about this and we do our due diligence and see the numbers that justify it long-term, I think it's something that could come back tenfold for Lafayette Parish and the school system in the long run. So another thing about expanding it, I would certainly be mindful of the waiting list and where the students are zoned. As to your point, Ms. Angel, about transportation, if all the students on the waiting list live in Youngsville, we may not be as cost effective as we think it is. I would also be mindful, to your point, Mr. Kinesic, about drawing a line and basically allocating students based on where you live to each academy. I'll be mindful of the free and reduced lunch ratios in our programs, which we strive so hard to keep balanced. And doing something like that may upset those ratios right there. As part of looking at expanding popular programs, I think it's a wonderful idea to have programs that have shown success, leadership in these programs who have grown these programs to be successful. I think they should be given the opportunity to expand their leadership and take on more responsibility. At the same time, I think we should also look at programs who may not have the enrollment numbers that we'd like to see. Maybe there's not interest in these particular programs, and certainly If the cost per student is high enough and the program is established enough at the school and still is not showing growth, perhaps we should take a look at offering something different at that school. Flip side of that same coin. Second to last, not sure if any of you know this, but we get a $20,000 stipend per classroom for every French immersion and I believe Spanish immersion classroom that we have in the parish. To Miss, is it Spanish, Miss? Do you know? Tia says she thought it was. I'm not completely sure. I know it's French.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a little ammunition for your presentation next.
Thank
Okay. Yeah, she's going to get us $20,000 per classroom for expanding the dual immersion program, but French as well. And I did
Actually, 45,000.
45.
Yeah, we pay 20, they pay the rest, so,
Well, it's much better than that. How about that?
yeah.
Okay, but before we get into the dual enrollment, I have a couple of questions, and then we can get to
Well,
that.
I'm not. Wait. I just wanted to say that and point out that we have in third, fourth, and fifth grade in French. This is not including Spanish, but in French, third, fourth, and fifth grade, which is the last 3 grade levels of elementary school, we have 296 students. In fifth, sixth, and seventh, we have 149. So if we were able to somehow retain these French students through middle school, then we would be adding additional revenue to the school system from the state of Louisiana just by putting more effort into retention and recruitment into those programs. That said, to Ms. Morris's point about managing the enrollment of programs, I've really been trying to think about how we avoid, once we get through our rezoning project, how we avoid large-scale upsetting the apple cart, so to speak, in the future. You know, I know we've all kind of said that successful school districts rezone every 3 years, and because you do it every 3 years, small changes are needed and not big changes. But one of the things that we have at our disposal, as opposed to other school districts, is we have schools of choice. We have the ability to expand and limit the number of seats available for incoming students at any particular school that has a program. And so what I think might be a good idea, and this is just a brainstorm that I had that certainly probably needs a little more fleshing out, but let's take Lafayette High, for example. And we'll say that Lafayette High, just to use round numbers, has a capacity of 2,000 students. And so what we're saying by setting that capacity number is we're saying we don't want any more than 2,000 students at this school. And then the number at every school can be different based on how many students they have. So what we would do is we would take every incoming freshman class, and we'd say, okay, well, the incoming freshman class at Lafayette High has 600 students. And we don't want more than 2,000. And so that means Health Academy, you either gain or lose seats for incoming students based on the change in the enrollment for the 9th graders. And so what we have is we use the schools of choice enrollment as a valve for population changes within the zone. And then we could get to the point where the zone grows so big that it's crowding out the academy, and maybe the academy has to move. Or maybe we do some rezoning to reduce that pressure in the zone. But I think it's another tool at our disposal, and if this board, since we're taking the time and making the effort to do this rezoning in a conscientious way, I think it's worth our time to set enrollment capacities at each of our schools, and then every year, every October, you know, a month in advance of Fall Frenzy, we say, okay, here's our October 1st head count, here's how many kids are in zone, here's how many kids are in the academy. Schools of choice programs, here are your open seats for next year. And each program can grow, each program can shrink, and we can manage it that way. Anyway, thank you for listening to me. That was just my random thoughts.
And just a comment kind of related to what you're talking about. When we look at this chart with the kids on the waiting list, I think we have to keep in mind also that, let's use the Lafayette High School Health Academy that has about 50 kids on the waiting list. I suspect strongly that some of those individuals are on the waiting list not because they have any overwhelming desire to be in the Health Academy as much as a desire to be at Lafayette High School.
I agree with you.
So if we do open a second location at Northside, it may be that those 50 students on the waiting list who actually don't care about the Health Academy but want to go to Lafayette High School, they're not going to necessarily transition to Northside just to be in the Health Academy. So that's going to affect some numbers as well. But that's something I'm not sure we would know until and unless we tried and kind of played with the numbers somewhat like you're talking about.
I'll give you an anecdotal evidence to back up your statement there. When we were discussing moving Health Academy or Arts Academy in the spring, several parents just, they plainly stated to me, they were like, we're in this to go to Lafayette High, and we want our kids to go to Lafayette High. And I would tell them, I'd say, okay, so, I mean, since you're not interested in the arts and you're just using this to go to Lafayette High, I will tell you 2 guaranteed ways to go to Lafayette High. And I said, one is to move into Lafayette High zone, but they said, there's another way. There's another way. I said, you can go to Karen Crowe Middle School. In the Biomedical Academy, you'll be guaranteed a seat in the Health Academy. So,
Right. All right. So my next question or comment is for Ms. Williams. Come on
thank y'all
up.
for listening.
Thank you. Come on down, Ms. Williams. Hi. I think it's the other one.
I don't like hot seat. How are you?
All right, so I definitely have a soft spot for your law academy.
Me too.
They're fabulous, and I don't know if they're still at
Got back from Yale last night.
Yale. That's awesome. I mean, it's an incredible academy. And I see, I mean, you have quite a few seats that are not filled. So I'm curious if you have a plan or what you do already to recruit within your school to get kids interested in becoming part of this incredible legal team that your school has.
So in the spring, usually after EOC, the U.S. history classes come in and they participate as if they're the jury for a mock trial. So they can see the end result of what the students work on and those kind of things, and then they get to do the verdict and all of that. They're also just active part of the school. We, advertise a lot. We have the fall frenzy, all of those kind of things. It's a prominent part.
All right, and do y'all do things throughout the school year? For example, reach out to maybe the Beta Club kids?
Yes, a lot of those kids are part of Student Council, Link Crew, National Honor Society, so it is a large part of the campus. And we do a lot where we invite 8th graders onto the campus, and they even come in and see it. That way it can be.
Okay, I would love to see that program grow and grow and grow. So I'm hoping with the increased number of students being zoned to your school,
Me
that
too.
you'll see a big jump.
Me too.
I have a question about that. Is there anything that we can do? I mean, Ms. Morris works for a law firm, but if we can get some of the local law firms involved, in what type of support could they provide? Is it monetary support, just lawyers volunteering? What is it that we could ask for that maybe the community, the business community, could provide to make it more successful?
We're always open to any support, but they are very active. They come in, they act as judges as they're preparing. One of the lawyers even traveled with the law team to Yale just recently. The community is very involved, so just continuing to build that. But they help support us financially and physically.
Dr. Aguilar, is there anything we can do for marketing? Oh, sorry. So can we do anything else to help market? Like maybe spend just a little bit more money on marketing the Law Academy?
Specifically, we'll brainstorm.
Okay.
Well, and on that, I would suggest perhaps talking to your Academy of Broadcasting to see what they can do to create some marketing for themselves.
Absolutely.
As well as their legal academy.
We've finally gotten an advisory committee together for the broadcasting, and they've really started rolling. We're getting some great input from the community.
And then maybe they can also reach out to the Academy of Information Technology at Karen Crowe and create, I think things like YouTube and things like that are free, so maybe they can create a really awesome YouTube marketing commercial.
Absolutely. I agree.
Or something like that.
I was just going to add that every academy has a budget to spend on marketing and promotional items, so they do have funds at each academy to do that. We really have asked the academy directors this year to focus on their advisory boards because we want that community support. As she said, we just had our second advisory board for the broadcast. It's finally getting some legs and starting to move. So I think the shift would be to also have the Law Academy to fully develop their advisory board to bring in more community members so they can help to see where the weaknesses and the strengths are and use that information to provide them with the support that they need, if it's monetarily or if it's speaking out in the community about the success that speaking out in the community that the success the Academy does have. And then bringing students out into the community, because those are the best recruiters, is the students in the program themselves.
If I could give Ms. Morris one clarification and then affirm something Mr. Kniezek said. I spoke to Mr. Debataz again. The 220 kids in the biomed pathway, those are only high school students. The middle school students do not choose a pathway. Theirs is more of a general studies, generic curriculum. And then in affirmation of Mr. Kniezek, and I've got my transportation hat on right now, if we would happen to duplicate or expand academies, we'd ask that you consider some type of geographic barrier, or barrier is not the right word, but line, boundary, and keeping in mind what Mr. Santani said in terms of economically disadvantaged students, but the budget cost to the transportation department to just have kids going from the west side to the east side, from the north side to the south side, that would become expensive.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
I know we started this with the school of choice and trying to move the health academy, and it's good dialogue. But I'm asking that we start the process of looking into whatever academy we want to move, may it be the French, the Spanish, the arts, the dance, the health, and it may be too late now, maybe, but I think we're professional enough to start it for the fall frenzy. But getting the committee together or the administration together to make sure we got all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. Whatever decision we make is going to be disagreed by someone and agreed by someone. So, we're here to make a decision on what's best for our students and the success of our students. So I would ask that we begin the process of trying to make whatever we want happen.
And I agree with Mr. Broussard that we need to have some definitive plan. So Dr. Aguilar or staff, if you have an idea of what our next step would be. I do think we need to wait till after our rezoning is finished so we really see where the kids will be and what the capacities are going to be at the schools. But I don't want this to be something that we spend a lot of time having a great dialogue about and then we walk away and it just kind of fades into the nighttime. So,
Ms. Samick?
Yes, Mr. Angel. Ms. Morse, we actually started that conversation yesterday, Ms. Olivier and I, as well as a few other people, to start looking at a procedure to put in place so that we just don't have a principal or a central office staff member arbitrarily saying, hey, let's open a new academy and let's do it now. So we did have that discussion, and I believe after Robin's comments, I still like to talk about the dual language enrollment, immersion.
Just a couple of timeline points. The system opens the day of the lottery, so that day is when the applications are available. We work with Smart Choice to build the application, so every academy's application is unique. It has specific information about that academy. So to build that application, we would have to work with Smart Choice, and the programmers need at least 2 weeks. So you're looking at the middle of October at least to give them the information that you need to put in the application. We refer to our little booklet as our catalog, which contains the information about all the different academies. The printing company, we talked to them about possibly adding another page. They gave us a deadline of at least the 19th that they want a hard copy material or electronic copy and a hard copy to look at to send that to print. To put the promotional material into the community's hands via newsletter, via sending it home to the students, or putting inserts into the newspaper, we're looking at, again, the middle of the month. Putting that insert into the Sunday newspaper. This morning, they quoted me, they could back up maybe to the 12th or the 13th, but they felt that was shaky ground, having the print material that goes in our insert. So we really on a short turnaround of when we need to get our information all solid and set and previewed to go to the different sources that we need to promote the frenzy and to have the applications ready.
I think we're ready for you, Ms. Samick.
Okay, well, thank you very much. 3 years ago, when I was principal at Alice Boucher, I was approached about opening another Spanish immersion school in the district. How did I feel about it? And people's positions have changed over 3 years, and the whole idea kind of lay dormant. last week I visited Burke Elementary School. I had a wonderful visit, wonderful opportunity to visit with ESL students, their classrooms, and I noticed that there was a large Hispanic-speaking population. I was also reminded of that conversation 3 years ago that many of our Spanish-speaking students or our students in the south part of the district does not want to participate in Spanish immersion because of bus transportation. They actually spend between 40 to 60 minutes riding on a bus as that bus traverses around picking up students as well as pre-K students to attend Spanish immersion at Alice Boucher. So curiosity got the best of me. I started looking at some of the enrollment numbers. Alice Boucher is doing well. It has an immersion population right now of 173. 94 are in zone and 79 are out of zone. And of the out of zone population, 23 are Hispanic. So I went back and I thought about another conversation I had with Nicole Boudreau before she retired. And she was about, Ms. Samick, we need to do a dual language immersion program. And I remember that dual language immersion is much different than the Spanish immersion, the one-way language that is offered at Alice Boucher. So I just would like to have 5 or 10 minutes for Tia LeBrun, who's our world language specialist, to just review with you the differences between dual language, our current one-way Spanish immersion, and then also our ESL program. I think there's a misunderstanding maybe in the community that ESL is a choice. ESL is not a choice, and we'd just like to clarify those items.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir, madame.
Okay, so I've only got a few slides to show with information comparing all of the data, and I'm Tia LeBrun for those of you who don't remember me from the introduction. But what we would like to see at Burke varies from what we see at Alice Boucher. The classes at Alice Boucher are English-speaking children whose parents have applied to get them into the Academy for Spanish Immersion. It's a one-way language, meaning that the children don't speak the language of instruction. So their Spanish immersion teachers are teaching them content through the medium of Spanish language, and they acquire a great level of bilingualism and biliteracy. In dual language, it is different because you want Spanish speakers in the environment. It should be a balance of about 50-50, English speakers and Spanish speakers, so that they are supporting each other's learning in both times of the day. When they're with their English teacher, the English speakers are stronger, coaching their peers. And in the Spanish part of the day, the Spanish speakers are the strong ones, and they get to coach their peers. Both groups of kids get to experience this cross-cultural learning environment, and they both do so well on standardized tests. And we've seen that year after year with immersion academies everywhere, including Lafayette Parish, that they are very high performing in those environments. So dual language versus English as a second language, there is a difference there as well. The classes, of course, with dual language are taught in Spanish and in English, whereas our ESL kids are only getting English content, and they have that ESL pull-out service for those who need the language support. That's a federal mandate. And sorry, this is covered up a little bit. It came from Google Slides. The difference in how they are categorized really goes down to the federal mandate for us giving support services to those kids who don't come from English-speaking homes. And it would still continue to be a support at Burke, where they already have a strong foundational program in ESL. Okay, so this is breaking down on this slide the difference between the English language learners and the English speakers. and some of their similarities. Thomas and Collier are the authors cited here have done lots of research, and I did put a resource slide too that I can share with you on Google Drive, or so that you guys can look it up if you'd like, or print out certain articles. The ELLs, within 6 years, their achievement levels in English language are far above what you would see in an ESL student after 6 years with only English instruction. And the English speakers also, within 6 years, they closed the gap with their Spanish-speaking peers by having the dual language instruction through those years. Here's some data that is from Thomas and Collier's articles, or a couple of them, showing transitional bilingual, developmental bilingual, and two-way bilingual. The two-way bilingual is what we're proposing we do at Burke, the dual language. And that's the yellow bars that are higher than everything else. And on the other side, you'll see a track of students who are in bilingual immersion is the blue line, and then those students who only had an ESL pull-out service and were mainstreamed on the red line. So we're expecting to see the same sort of progress here because it's been proven already. And the whole entire district of El Paso, Texas is all dual language now as a default program for all of the students. And they're showing great gains now in their ELL populations. And with a strong student body already located at Burke, it wouldn't take much recruiting to get students in those classrooms to participate. So the immediate benefits would attract, this program would ideally attract kids to it because we've had waiting lists for the immersion programs, and because it would be available in the South, it would make a whole new community region, right there next to it. So they may be more willing to send their kids there. Heightened achievement has been seen immediately within it with strong implementation of dual language programs. And the increased student engagement comes anytime you have some sort of added cognitive benefit in the room, such as with the dual language immersion and the one-way immersions that we have now. And the startup challenges, I've written down staff development because it would take a lot of understanding from the faculty what goes on exactly so that they could know how to support each other, and the instructional resource selection, which we have continuously with finding resources in another language, but we have done so well with the programs that we have, even if we haven't been able to give equity to all of the teachers. And I have a 3-bullet action plan, things that I plan to do if the board's interested in investigating this a little further. And I have contacts from other states where dual language is, it exists and it's really strong. And here we would be the first parish in the state to take on this kind of program and offer this kind of support to our ELLs. So, you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. First of all, I commend your presentation. It was brief and to the point, and I mean that. And I want to make an anecdotal comment. It's amazing how the pendulum swings one way and the other. When I was a kid, we couldn't speak French because we were told that it would hinder the learning process.
Yes.
We couldn't speak it at recess. We'd go behind trees and talk with the teachers on duty wouldn't hear us. And I was an altar boy, and the priest who was from Alsace, Monsignor Wast, who's since passed away, but the first Mass on Sunday, his sermon was in French because everybody there spoke French. He spoke English, German, and French. And of course, it's proven to be that when you are bilingual or trilingual or multilingual, you do learn. You tend to learn better, and most European students speak at least 2 or 3 languages.
Yes.
And they obviously learn well. My whole idea, personally, is of course, it's a wonderful idea. I love the interaction, the potential interaction, whether it, in this case, Spanish, but between Spanish-speaking students and English-speaking students. I think it would help the English students learn Spanish, and it would help the Spanish students learn English. My only thing is pure dollars and cents, and numbers of teachers, and what is it going to cost us for this kind of a program? That's my personally concern.
So, Ms. Tia, could you show the next slide?
I just pulled it up. Miss Olivier has broken down a little bit of the initial costs, and if we start with just 2 kindergarten sections, because it would have to build year by year, and if we offer just the 2 kindergarten sections the first year, you'll see here how it's broken down with teachers, and it would actually be a savings to have the two dual language kindergartens and the 1 regular versus the 2 regular kindergarten classes if we recruit from other countries, as we've done when we need to fill positions.
So would the idea be to no longer have ESL classes, and all those students that are in ESL would become part of the dual? You would have dual enrollment and also ESL?
Yes, because those students would still warrant the use of those services. They're still guaranteed those support services.
Okay, that's one of those things the federal government mandates to have its
but
pull-out services.
many of them would probably graduate out of ESL at a much quicker rate than they currently do. So they would only need services for 3 years versus 6 years, something like that.
All right. And is the idea to ultimately make Burke basically a 100% dual language school, sort of like Myrtle is a 100% French immersion school?
Well, I think that'd be awesome, but that's not something that's been talked about yet. We just wanted to see how the proposal of having a program within a school would go, just as we have at Prairie or Evangeline and Plantation for now. That we'd like to see where we can go with this, but we know that the high rate of Spanish speakers enrolled at Burke would make this an ideal location.
So my thought is, one, I think all the schools should be dual language. I think that that's one area that the U.S. falls behind on compared to other countries. My understanding, which is very limited, is that they have a dual language or more, tri-language, whatever, from the time they're very small.
Yes.
So I think that if this is something you want to go for the whole thing. Have like a long-term plan to start off small, but ultimately become where Burke is the dual language school, 100%.
Well, that'd be great.
So, and I think that, it would be long-term, but then if that's your ultimate goal, then you can work towards that regularly. And I understand that over the last few years, we have had quite an increase in our Spanish-speaking population.
Yes.
So I do think that the trend of mobility, I guess, is going to help support the program. So I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. And Ms. Morris, if you'll endure just a little more. Ms. Ellison, would you come up to the microphone and just talk about the ESL population that currently is at Burke and the percentage of Spanish-speaking students?
Janie Ellison, Program Supervisor for ESL. Burke last year was the first year that we had a full ESL program there. And it was chosen because the children, the Spanish-speaking children, are a huge population of ESL children, lived in that area. In fact, they're all in zone with exception of several that come from Doosan. So we're able to have Ridge with all in zone ESL children, Burke with all his ESL in zone children, and S.J. Montgomery almost with all ESL children in zone, meaning we're not busing them around. So that's why Burke was chosen, and as we began to look at the demographics of that neighborhood, we found that the ESL population is about 85% Hispanic at Burke right now, and it's because that's where they live. They live in, likewise, we have a new ESL program at Acadiana High the second year, and that's where the children live. We still have a full 4 years at Lafayette High, but we have now 2 years, 9th and 10th, at Acadiana High. Does that answer?
I would maintain not only is that where they, I mean, the reason that they live there is because that's probably where their parents work.
And it's affordable.
There's a lot of work.
Very
going
affordable
on over
housing,
there, both in the agricultural and the building, you know.
For sure, for sure. So, and the transportation costs went down to in-zone transportation. And so that was a win situation. And before that, we had many children that were refusing ESL services, or parents, because they were being transported far away from home. And they were choosing just to stay in their home zone without ESL support. So this program would be in supplement of ESL. We would still continue our ESL program, but we would also offer this option for literacy in Spanish for children.
And I think that's key, because many of the families speak Spanish. Some are not able to read Spanish, to teach their children how to read Spanish. Kind of goes back to your comments about the, French years ago. We want to provide the children the opportunity not only to speak the broken language of Spanish, but to learn it appropriately, learn how to read it, and learn how to write it along with English. And right now in ESL or ELL, they're not allowed to use the Spanish language. So we actually want to support both.
All right, so along with this program, or the programs ESL and dual language, what steps or processes are being considered to make sure those gifted Spanish-speaking children are being captured for our gifted program? Certainly there are some, and we're missing them because they're not strong English speakers at this point. So
For sure.
is that something that we can roll in also to this dual language, or even into the ESL program, to make sure that those gifted Spanish students are being identified? I think we recently had a short conversation about identifying children from more impoverished parts of the parish. I don't think they're as identified as frequently as in other parts of the parish. So I want to make sure that at the other end of the spectrum, that we're making sure we're capturing those students and providing the appropriate services as well.
Well, and for sure, and not just Spanish, we have probably 34 different languages.
Yeah, any language, but I want to make sure we're not missing gifted kids because of the language barrier. So I'm not sure what processes we have, but if we're looking at changing or adding a new type of program, I want to make sure we're rolling in all of the things that we need to make sure those kids are getting all of the services that they should be getting.
Yes, I would agree.
So having a Spanish-speaking teacher who's a trained teacher from their native country would definitely help with the assessment.
Because that is the challenge, for sure. The challenge of the evaluation in the mother tongue.
So what is the next step that all of you need from us on the executive committee? Do you need us to make a motion to bring it to the board, or just a directive?
That would be preferable.
Okay, well, there's just two of us here, so I guess,
A motion and a second.
okay.
Which one you want to be, Ms. Morris? The motion or the second?
I'll be the motion.
Okay. I'll be the second.
And I'm not sure, however the agenda item is worded, Melva. Okay. The motion to move to the regular board meeting.
Right, the committee, for sure. The committee asked that the board consider. Request that the board consider.
And Mr. Angel, just to be clear, you would like this for the board to hear on Wednesday of next week, October 12th?
Depends. How long is that agenda?
It's not long.
It depends how quickly you move it along, Ms. Morris.
I guess it would be more of an information item at this point to present it to the board, or is it going to be in the form of an action?
No,
a motion to?
I think it's too soon to be action.
Okay, so as an information item for the full board.
So just to be clear, I think because this would start in kindergarten, and there's such a large population at this school, I think at a minimum, we would want you to know that we are able to pilot this program at Burke. So I think as an information item, let the board know that we're going to begin to see if this makes sense at Burke before we move it toward becoming a school of choice or a special program.
And it was unanimous, Madam Secretary. Any other,
Yeah, I have one other item.
Yes.
Kind of going back to the Health Academy issue with Mr. Broussard. I want to ask that we have a good follow-up for our next executive committee meeting to make sure that we're kind of staying on top of where we are and looking at the various health academies, the options, the cost, and the viability of that particular idea. So if you can just make sure it's on that agenda for our next.
Will do.
If there's no other items to be brought up, I'll declare this committee meeting adjourned.